Welcome to We Mean Business. I'm Steve Dorfman here with a mustache. To find out why I'm growing this mustache this month, please visit mobro.co/Steve Dorfman. Now on with today's show. Are you comfortable hiring leaders and not managers? And what the heck's the difference between managing and leading? That's what we're going to talk about today. And we're here with Catherine Meloy. Catherine is President and CEO of Goodwill of Greater Washington. Catherine, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Steve. It's good to be here this morning.
And so we've talked about this before on previous shows, and we've asked probably a dozen previous guests that question: what's the difference between managing and leading? The difference between management and leadership? And I think a lot of people kind of struggle with that and wonder what the heck are they talking about? I thought it was the same thing.
Yeah, you know, you and I had the opportunity of meeting at a breakfast, and we talked about really what was the difference between leadership and managing. And, you know, there's several things that come to mind. First of all, and I'll just say this, leaders are very innovative. There are really they're very distinct headsets between a leader and a manager. As I said, leader is innovative, and a manager just manages the process. Leaders are people who search for people that are smarter than themselves, and managers manage people.
Mm-hmm. That aren't necessarily smarter than themselves?
They probably are not smarter than themselves.
Okay.
You know, that probably is not the case. I think that managers like to manage people, whereas leaders love innovative people. Mm-hmm. And so what happens is they thirst for, they strive for working with people that are really smarter, better, bringing different ideas, because that's what strong leadership really does. Mm-hmm. And so there really are. Now I have to tell you something. A company has to have both leaders and they have to have managers in order to be, you know, a strong organization. So it doesn't mean that if you're a manager, that's not good, or if you're a leader, that's better. It really is that those are totally different kinds of talent skills.
How do good leaders bring out the best in their employees? Is that something managers can also do, or do you really have to be a leader to do that?
Yeah, no, I think managers can bring out the best in their employees, but I tell you what leaders do is that leaders set kind of the standard or the direction as where they want the organization to go, or where they want their particular division to go. But then what they do is that they go to the people who work for them and say, okay, how are we going to get this done? Mm-hmm. And so instead of managing the process, they bring out the thinking process as to how should the direction occur.
Anytime you want to share a story about how this has played out at Goodwill of Greater Washington, please feel free, because I'd love to have you share some of that.
Okay, great.
So, you know, one of the things that that I wanted to talk about today is this article that you based your talk at this leadership breakfast where we met. Mm-hmm. You based it on this article from Harvey Mackay.
Right.
Good leaders think long range and inspire following. Yeah. And so he made a number of distinctions between managing and leading. So I want to toss some of those out to you and just get your thoughts on it.
Okay,
so
great.
Of course, the first one you covered already. The manager administers, the leader innovates.
Right.
Or the leader innovates, rather. The manager administers.
Right.
The manager is a copy. The leader is an original. Talk about that a little bit.
Okay. I think that a leader being an original is that what they do, they are always striving to say, how are we different? So they strive for just the next step. Mm-hmm. And managers copy, meaning that managers copy good processes. But leaders don't want to even copy. They want to go ahead and look and say, wait a minute, how can we do it differently than what we're doing now? And so that again is a major difference between a leader and somebody who is managing. Mm-hmm. You know, the word manager comes from the word manage, which is obviously managing a process. Leaders come from the word lead, which means you're moving forward. Mm-hmm. And so that, again, is the distinction between a leader and a manager.
Yeah, I imagine, I hadn't thought of it that way before, but, you know, of course, the root word being manage, and of course, that was a word that existed, I'm sure, long before the 1850s, when this idea of management was introduced.
Right, yeah. And you know, when as you just said that, it just kind of struck and you were saying about something with Goodwill. If you manage a budget, you actually are just doing the process of what the budget's told you. But when you put a budget together, that's when you go ahead and you are leading the process. Mm-hmm. And so every year, every organization across America, whether you're on a fiscal or a calendar year, you put together a budget for the next year. The leader is the one that says, okay, what does the organization look like? What will it look like at the end of, right now, we're saying at Goodwill, mm-hmm. what will we look like at the end of 2013? Mm-hmm. What will we look like, and really even further, what will we look like at the end of 2015? You know, that's what a leader does, is that they're looking out. Mm-hmm. But, you know, again, you have to have managers who take that forward thought and say, all right, now how are we managing the process today in order to make sure that the steps we're taking today are helping us to create what the leadership's vision is at the end of 2013 or at the end of 2015. Yeah. And we have what's called, at Goodwill Greater Washington, we have what's called the 2020 vision. So we actually have, with the board and with the people that are the senior leaders in our organization, have said, what does Goodwill of Greater Washington look like in 2020? And when you look out that far, it allows you, first of all, it allows you to dream. Secondly, it allows you to set a direction that puts you on a course far greater than what you would be doing as if you were just looking at 2013. Mm-hmm. And that's fun.
Yeah.
It's fun.
Anything's possible.
Yeah.
7 years down the line, who knows?
That's right. Well, you know, and you look at John F. Kennedy. Mm-hmm. When he took office, he said, by the end of the century, he would go ahead, end of the decade. Right. The end of the decade, we would have a man on the moon. And that was early 1960s, in the early 60s. And by 1969, there was a man on the moon. Mm-hmm. At the time that he said that, our space, system wasn't even thinking that, wasn't mm-hmm. even in play to do that. But that talks about somebody that looked 10 years down the road and said, what could we be doing? Where could we be? And I think about that vision often.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
And a couple things I just got from what you just shared. So one thing is that managers manage processes and leaders lead people.
Yeah.
So that's one distinction. And then
right.
The other thing that I got, it's just now slipping my mind. Oh, leaders are visionary,
yeah.
right? And that's something you don't often see in managers.
Yeah, I think because I think leaders are not afraid to fail. Leaders, so your vision was we're going to put a man on the moon. Mm. If we didn't put a man on the moon, did that make Kennedy any less of a leader? No. Would he, if he had still been living, would he have been proud of what was accomplished? Yes. But would he have been devastated if it hadn't been accomplished? No, he would have just said, okay, so if we didn't do it this year, how do we make it still happen? Or is it the right vision to have? And if it's not, let's change the direction. Mm-hmm. And that is, I think, is also, leaders do not, they get disappointed, but they allow themselves to fail, to go ahead and to keep moving forward. Mm-hmm. And I think sometimes managers, because they're managing a process, they are less likely to allow themselves to fail because they're managing what needs to be done mm-hmm. at the here and now.
Do you believe there's also more fear of failure in that role?
Yeah, I think so. Because you know what, a leader is fearless. A manager has to have some fear mm-hmm. because, again, they're managing what needs to be done. And so they are constantly thinking, you know what, we got to get this done.
Yeah.
We got to get it done today. Whereas a leader is truly looking, again, outward.
Another one of these distinctions is the manager maintains, the leader develops.
Mm-hmm. So let's go back to the budget process.
Mm-hmm.
The manager is maintaining the budget as it is today. But a leader is developing what the organization should be 2 years down the road, 3 years down the road in 2020. And so, again, it really is, it's a different headset. Both critical in an organization. Critical. Mm-hmm. But two major distinctions.
Yeah.
And the question is, which I always think is, can a manager become a leader? And I think that managers, because of the process that you build up in an organization, that managers can become leaders. Because I think that there are leaders that are currently managers, and they're developing. However, not every manager is a leader. And that's okay, again, in an organization.
Yeah. Well, so that brings up the idea of fear once again. So I think that the reason that a leader is developing people, or something that helps them develop people to become leaders, whether they're a manager already or just anybody really inside the organization, to think about promotion.
Yeah.
I think that because a leader is visionary and innovative and not so fearful about being replaced themselves, and I think that maybe is one of the distinctions. A manager may be sort of holding folks down a little bit because they might be fearful that if they develop somebody too much, they might just come and take my job.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
and along that line, and you are exactly right. I think that managers sometimes, and this is putting. I don't want to put people in blocks, but a lot of times a manager is fearful because, again, they are managing a process and they're concerned that if somebody does it better, then they are not a proven entity. Whereas a leader goes ahead and says, and they're looking at managers. Leaders look at managers, and what would make a great leader looking at a manager is if the manager goes ahead and challenges the leaders. Why are we doing this? What are we doing it for? How are we going to be better if we do it? And those are the people that you go ahead and say, wait a second, that's a great leader, because they're asking questions. Whereas a manager who says, okay, you told me what to do and now I'm just going to do it, and I'll do it to the best of my ability. That, again, is someone who manages, but who is not probably a future leader.
Very good. So there's yet another distinction. The leader asks great questions, or the potential leader, right?
Always is asking great questions.
Yeah.
A leader, I think, the people that I've respected, that I, truly would call leaders, we're always asking why, or what, or how can we do it better, or who's doing it better, and they're always asking that critical question of why.
Yeah, very good. So the manager focuses on systems and structure. The leader focuses on people. I think we've covered that pretty well.
Right.
The manager relies on control. I like this one. The manager relies on control. The leader inspires trust.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A leader, and this is, I think, when you say inspires trust, what does that actually mean? And what it means is that the leader will actually go ahead and whatever they say, it happens. Or whatever they're fearless of, people understand why they're fearless of it. And going back to the manager, what did they say to the manager? What was the word that they used there about a manager?
Relies on control.
Relies on control. Because a manager relies on control, that control is always, they're in control. They're controlling whatever has to be done. Leaders always feel leaders don't mind being out on the edge. They don't mind that they don't have total control, because that's part of the excitement of really leading people is, going ahead and saying, I don't know what we're really actually, I know what we should be doing, but I don't know how we're going to get there, so let's get there together as a team, and you help me find the way. Whereas a manager is trying to be controlled. Let's do it this way because this is the way it should be done. And that's a major distinction.
Is it empowerment, really, that we're talking about here?
Yeah, I think it is. I think it is. I think though managers can feel empowered by leaders, and leaders, what's interesting about that is managers can feel empowered, but they have to feel empowered by somebody allowing them to be empowered. Whereas a leader, just by confidence, just by how they think, they don't need to be empowered except by themselves.
Yeah.
It's kind of, it comes with the territory of being a leader.
I would imagine there's an emotional intelligence there as well.
Definitely. definitely
that contributes to
emotional
that. So we've got to take a break.
Okay.
When we come back, I want to cover this one. The manager has his or her eye always on the bottom line. The leader has his or her eye on the horizon. All right.
Look forward to it.
You're watching We Mean Business, and I'm here with Catherine Meloy, President and CEO of Goodwill of Greater Washington. We'll be back in seconds.
The pain will not control us. It will never break us, define us, or keep us still. Because arthritis can't beat us if we beat it first. In the fight against arthritis, you need a weapon. What's yours? Visit the Arthritis Foundation at fightarthritispain.org.
Welcome back to We Mean Business. I'm Steve Dorfman here with Catherine Meloy, President and CEO of Goodwill of Greater Washington. And we're taking the time today to really iron out the distinctions between managing versus leading. What is the difference? And during the break, Catherine, you were answering a question that I asked you on the phone several weeks ago, and that is if you were going to write a book, what would that book be entitled?
And I said, Uncompromised. Mm-hmm. You asked me that over the phone, and so first of all, I had a little bit of time to think about it, and what immediately came to my head was uncompromised. And I think strong leaders they do not compromise themselves. And that is, and we were talking during the break, that is from everything from what do you wear to when somebody brings you a problem, do you try to take the easy way out? Or do you try to shift the figures? Or do you, whatever the situation is that brought to you, do you stand by the integrity of who you are? And I think strong leaders are fearless in their integrity. And when they falter, they go from being a leader to somebody who people respect, to somebody that goes ahead and steps back and says, well, they said who they were, but they didn't act what they wanted to be. Mm-hmm. And we can go, there are many people who through the centuries have been considered strong leaders, but who fell from grace because they were not true to themselves, mm-hmm. and they were not uncompromised.
Yeah. They
compromised themselves.
So here's a quote you can put in your book when you write it.
Okay,
a guy named Ian Percy, who's a speaker, said that we judge others by their behavior. We judge ourselves by our intentions.
Yeah.
And a lot of times there's a misalignment there.
That is so true. Yeah. Because, and to go just a step further on that, we do know what our intentions are, rightfully or wrongfully so. But what happens is that people are constantly judging us. And so we really do become who people see us to be, mm-hmm. not by the intentions,
right.
but by who people see us to be.
That's right.
So it's, yeah.
That leads me to this this quote that you used when you introduced that leadership breakfast that I attended. In the session description, you said that in the New York Times bestselling book, Fierce Leadership by Susan Scott, there's a quote, and the quote is, you will not single-handedly cause or prevent success. Surround yourself with people who model accountability, ferocious integrity, personal authenticity, the capacity to connect with others at a deep level, sheer courage, and a commitment to champion the common good over narrow self-interest. Mm-hmm. So why did that resonate so much with you, and so much that you chose to use that in the session description?
Yeah. First of all, and we talked just a little bit about this during the break, you could take that quote and you could break it down, and you could make a week's retreat out of just that quote. Mm-hmm. But the first part of it is you won't succeed or fail by yourself, and I think that people who really are strong leaders, truly strong leaders, they understand that. They understand that they are only limited by who they surround themselves with, and you are limitless if you surround yourself with just incredibly strong, talented people, far better than yourself. Back to Goodwill, you mm-hmm. asked earlier in the show if I had examples. I know nothing about technology, nothing. But I have a CIO, his name is Jeff Cole, who is incredibly insightful on technology. And I don't mean just, what computers we should use. It is truly, what is the organization going to need to look like? What are we going to need to, what's our bandwidth going to need to be, 3 and 4 and 5 years down the road? And you know what? I've got to let it go with him. I got to just say, I trust you. You're the visionary. You're the leader in that area. Mm-hmm. Go with it, because I don't understand it. I don't even care to understand it, and that's okay. I think leaders can say that's not my skill set, and when you can say that's not my skill set, it's really, that is also very, I will say, invigorating for the people that are around you, because they say, okay, she admits that she doesn't understand it, and she's allowing me to lead in that area. And that's just the very beginning of that quote.
Yeah, you're right. We could do a whole show just on that quote.
Yeah, exactly, right.
So here's another distinction that Harvey McKay made in his article. The manager has his or her eye always on the bottom line.
Uh-huh.
The leader has his or her eye on the horizon.
Mm-hmm. I think going back to what we were talking about budget-wise, and this is, I say this all the time, when we put a budget together, like for 2013 at Goodwill of Greater Washington, and it's going to be approved next week by the board, the day after it's approved, it will change. It just will. Life changes. Mm-hmm. Circumstances changes. The vision goes ahead and continues to keep on evolving. Mm-hmm. And it's okay for a vision to evolve. That doesn't mean that the leader is going off course. It means that they're evolving the vision. And yet there are people who are in the organization who really do need to manage the bottom line, who need to constantly be saying, okay, but are we sticking to what is fiduciary, what the responsibility is of the organization? And that's where a leader has to constantly be saying, yes, we have to manage the bottom line, but in managing the bottom line, are we stifling ourselves, or are we growing the organization forward? Mm-hmm. And so you've got people who need to keep in control, but also a person who goes ahead and looks forward and is visionary about where that control can lead them. Mm-hmm.
Great segue to this one. The manager accepts the status quo. The leader challenges it.
You know what it is. That does lead into it. Mm-hmm. I think a manager goes ahead and says, you know what, we're doing well. Right now, and this is, again, Goodwill of Greater Washington is doing well. Mm-hmm. It really is. We're serving a ton of people. We're growing our retail stores. We really work with people who are disabled and disadvantaged. And the staff that we have, the team that we have, is doing a phenomenal job for this community. That's the status quo. Yeah. What do I say? And sometimes I got to say, it does drive people crazy. I go, but is it enough? Mm-hmm. Are we doing enough? And you know what? The answer always is, I don't care if you're running Goodwill of Greater Washington, or you're running Verizon, or you're running Apple. Mm-hmm. It's never enough. There's always something else to be done. Mm-hmm. And so those are what leaders are always saying is, okay, what's the next step? Are we doing it well enough?
Yeah, very good. How about this one? The manager is the classic good soldier. The leader is his or her own person. Mm-hmm.
I think great managers are exactly that. They're good soldiers. Good soldiers go ahead and they take what the general says, mm-hmm. and they do it well. Yep. But the general has got to be saying, okay, I'm my own person. I'm not just a soldier. I'm not just doing what I'm told to do. I'm actually asking myself, why are we doing it? What should we be doing differently? And so that allows you to be just not a soldier, but a general, because the general has to lead. And that goes back to, again, integrity. If you've got a strong leader who has strong integrity, the soldiers will follow. Mm-hmm. But if you don't have integrity, and if you don't have self-discipline, and if you don't have a vision that you can really impart that vision onto the soldiers, they'll never go up the hill with you. But if you can do those things, then they'll go up the hill with you.
And you've been able to attract and retain some great talent, a great staff. What are your tips on how to do that? What are some pitfalls? What are some things that people aren't doing right, or just sort of in their blind spots when it comes to attracting and retaining the best talent?
You know, I'll tell you where I failed. Where I failed was when, first of all, when I didn't know what the organization needed. You know, sometimes you go ahead and you hire a vice president of something, doesn't matter what it is. And you kind of talk about, you go back to, well, what does the organization need right today? And what I learned really quickly was, don't look at what the organization needs today. Look at who can bring you what the organization is going to look like 5 years from now. And that's from our CFO, that's from our COO. Our COO, his name is Michael Fromm. He is incredible. And he's incredible because, first of all, he feels very comfortable challenging me as to what we should be doing. He also comes with a breadth and a depth of understanding areas of HR and other areas that, again, that I don't have the depth and knowledge of. But he brings that to the table. And so when you're looking on hiring people, you have to look to say, what do those people bring to the table today that we don't currently have? And how can they go ahead and make us stronger and really be a visionary organization moving forward?
And I have to wonder how you discover that about somebody. Do you have some favorite interview questions, or what are your tips there?
Well, first of all, we have a process at Goodwill. We, especially for senior management people, we interview, the HR department interviews, first of all. And then they go ahead and they come to myself. And let's say it's of our senior team. There's 8 senior VPs. And I would tell you, I would never hire anybody unless I took them out to dinner. It's amazing what you learn about people in a dinner situation that you don't learn about them in an interview situation. You can have them into your office 3, 4, 5 times. But it's when you really take them out and you find out about who their family is. What do they enjoy doing when they're not working? What are their biggest successes? And when you're out away from the office, when you're in a dinner situation, that's when you really find out about people.
Yeah.
The other thing is that within our Goodwill, is that senior management people are also interviewed by all the other senior management people because they are a part of a team. And as a part of a team and the leadership team leading the organization forward, the other leaders on that team have to really believe and feel comfortable with those people.
Really good. I would think another great reason to take somebody out to dinner is because you can observe how they treat the restaurant staff.
Oh, totally.
I think that's a very telling thing.
Totally.
Whether you're on a first date
that is so true. It's so interesting. I'm amazed at how many times a waiter will come up and they'll say, "My name is Steve." And people will never go ahead and call them Steve. But they are the ones that are bringing you dinner. They're the ones that are filling your water.
Yeah.
And do you ever turn and look them in the eye and say, "Steve, thanks for dinner.
Yeah.
Thanks for water."
Right.
First of all, selfishly, you get great service that way.
Yeah.
But secondly, you know what? That is something that you can observe in an interview session is, how do you treat people who will have no future impact on you, but who in the moment are in your life?
Yeah. I love it.
Yeah.
That is all of our time for today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine.
It was a pleasure to be on the show.
A pleasure to have you with us.
Great.
And so you've been watching We Mean Business. To learn more about Catherine Meloy and Goodwill of Greater Washington, please visit wemeanbiz.tv. To learn more about why I'm growing this mustache, visit mobro.co/Steve Dorfman. So thanks for joining us today, and we'll catch you next time.